Hi, everyone, and welcome to the End of Life Journey and Beyond, the Sands of Time. My name is Lisa Strahs-Lorenc, and I'm a bereavement specialist. Hello, Susan. It's always good to see you.
Hi, Lisa. Good morning. It's always good to see you too. And thank you for joining us today. My name is Susan Capurso. I'm an end-of-life doula and legacy specialist. And today we're talking about a very important topic, a topic for all of us to practice every day of our lives. However, in our discussion today, Lisa and I will speak about the topic being intentionally present. Okay, even when you've been given some kind of diagnosis, um, being mindfully present is so important now during this time. As human beings, we're all given all kinds of challenges through our lives. We know this, but especially with our health. Being present helps us give each moment the space to allow in some calm, right? To discover a light that maybe we never even knew that we had. And we can open a pathway a little bit for a little more healing. But no matter what that may be for you at this time, being aware of what is happening right now in this very moment can open doors and help you see outside of the box that you might be in today. So we're going to revolve that discussion around this a little bit today. And Lisa, I know
Absolutely.
that this is an important topic for you because you
It is.
you know many people right now in your life that need to be in this present moment that
I
may
do.
not be.
I do. Right. So, a number of my friends have been given diagnoses. The C word has always been a scary word for all of us, but it is not what it used to be. There's so many more ways of dealing with illness. For instance, my cousin 2 years ago was given the diagnosis of ovarian cancer. Now, that diagnosis would have been the end, and it wasn't. It's 2 years already, and she's doing pretty well. And my friend's husband has lung cancer. Things have progressed, and my husband died of pancreatic cancer, which is, of course, one of the four cancers that's really, really very, very difficult to cope with. So these diagnoses are, a wake-up call for people as you're going through your life and doing your day to day. All of a sudden, you know, uh,
And the
life
world
is
does
just
stop. The world does
the
stop because you realize at that point that nothing else in the whole world is more important than this
That's
right
right.
now.
That's right.
None of the struggles you had
Mm,
yesterday, none of the
That's
struggles
right.
you had 20 minutes ago.
That's right. That's right. Um, but I want to step back for a second because I want to tell you the difference since I've gone through both. I want to tell you the difference between sudden death, where there's absolutely no planning and no ability to say goodbyes or stay in the moment or do special things, versus this anticipated death where you have, quote, a sentence or a time frame, which, by the way, no one really knows. Okay, they can send out, you have 2 months, you have 6 months, everybody listens to all those things. The truth is that you really don't know how your body's going to react, what's going to happen. It's really, really interesting. One of the articles that I read was a really famous author, Art Buchwald, who was writing all the time and has all kinds of stories. And apparently, he was told his kidneys are failing and some other things are happening. And meantime, um, he did hospice. He's a humorist and a Pulitzer Prize winning writer, right? And so he enters this hospice inpatient facility. He decides to discontinue dialysis. All right. And next several months, he receives all these visits from friends and admirers. And his kidneys begin to function again. And he returns home. Okay. And he writes a book about his experience. And he writes, and I want to quote this: what started out of the worst of times ended up as the best of times. The big news is that I'm still alive. After being in hospice waiting to die, I said, to hell with it. I'm going to write a book. And he did. And it's really interesting that he took this time to be in the present, to spend whatever quote time he had left, which you don't know, and to make the most out of it. And that's what we're talking about. That word making today count. All of a sudden, now I experienced both. I just want to share this. So my biological mother was killed by a car, and that was instantaneous. And my father was on vacation, had a massive heart attack. In both cases, there were no goodbyes. I mean, basically, that's it. Now everybody says at least the person didn't suffer. At least you didn't have to worry about, ongoing illness and everything else. But for those of us who are left, the problem is that we didn't get to say goodbye, and we didn't get to plan, and we didn't do any of those things. So none of us want to suffer. None of us want to have illness. None of us want to be debilitated and all that stuff. But the thing is, if you have time, whatever they're saying, you have the opportunity to really be in the present. You have the opportunity to do things that maybe you didn't think were important before, and all of a sudden now they are important. Okay. You didn't have the ability to maybe do that trip that you had talked about all this time, but you kept putting it off. There are
Well,
so
that's
many.
where the term bucket list comes in.
That's
That's how
right.
bucket lists evolved.
That's
You
right.
know, what haven't you done? Oh no, I have limited time and I need to get that done now.
And
But
yeah, it's human nature to just
yeah,
keep putting it off and saying, oh, well, I have time. I don't have to worry about that. But how many people do we know who say, when I retire, I'm going to do such and such. And they get to retirement and they die and something happens. So they didn't have that time that they thought they did have. And they put off. It's interesting. There was a really, and I'm trying to think of her name, Irma Bombeck. Irma Bombeck said on her deathbed, I wish I hadn't spent so much time cleaning my house.
hmm
And interesting.
yeah. And I've heard that expressed by many male executives um, that are ADD and what's the word I'm looking for? Um,
Workaholics.
Type A personalities, right?
Workaholics. Yes,
Workaholics, you always see that that's their biggest regret, that I didn't realize that I wouldn't have the time and that I should have spent more time with my family. But regardless, we're going off here a
yes.
little bit on a
Yes, we are.
tangent. But what we're saying here is that it doesn't matter if you're given a diagnosis, if you're
Right.
given, oh, you have a certain illness that you're going through right now. Who knows what the diagnosis will
That's
be, like you
that's
said.
right.
And
That's
it
right.
and it could be terminal, and maybe you do have a year to live, but maybe you don't.
Yes.
However, wherever you are right now, being mindful in the moment, it does bring a sense of calm, like I said earlier, because I've been practicing this, especially this past year. Just a lot of stress and anxiety in my life and things, I don't have an illness, but things that are happening on an everyday basis. And I know I've taught myself that if you practice that being present and staying in the moment with different things, instead of I could scramble through my tasks in 4 hours and not even know what I did at the beginning of the 4 hours and running from here to there and don't have time to go to the bathroom because I'm rocking in my chair because I want to
Right.
get this done, right? Or you can do one little bit at a time and say, wow, look what I've accomplished today. I've got this done, and there's ways to do that.
For me, it's taking a step back. I think you
Mm-hmm.
have to take a step back and look and say, okay, how important is this? And what do I want? And what's important in my life? And that's the thing. You get jumbled into the
Yeah.
everyday craziness and you don't look and say, hey, this is not. Remember the book, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. It's the idea of it, but really
Yeah.
being in the present and knowing what's important to you and what you really want. Look, we all have many things we have to do, you have to, get through or whatever, but making a conscious effort to be very present and to make sure that what you're doing with your life is what you want and getting rid of the other things, that's so important. It's interesting
See,
about people being victims of their diseases. We all feel like we're a victim, but if you actually turn that around and say, I'm in charge of this, this is now my decision. Am I going to go cross country? Am I going to go to this party? Am I going to make a party? Am I going to see some
yeah,
friends?
but I'm struggling here in this
Go
conversation,
ahead.
Lisa, because it's not, you know, it's easy for us to say this.
Sure it is. Sure it is.
And I don't want anyone to think that we're making
Yes.
light of this in any way.
Yes.
And I don't want
Yes.
anybody to think that we're talking about bucket lists either.
Yes.
You
Yes.
know, do things that you haven't done because you wanted to do it and you don't have time now. We're not making light there.
Yeah.
And how do you and I don't have any kind of a debilitating,
Yes.
I want to say I want to just say diagnosis,
Diagnosis. Yes.
not terminal diagnosis,
Yes.
because they're not all terminal and you don't always know.
Right.
But,
Right.
we use terminal in all of our videos, because we
Correct.
talk about end of life.
Sure. Sure.
But just for argument's sake, today, maybe we're not talking about terminal, but we're talking about an illness. And I'm imagining me being at home listening to this video right now and me saying, but it's easy for you.
Sure.
It's
Sure. We're
easy for
not
you.
sure.
No, it's not
Sure.
easy for me. It's not how I make light of things or think about what the doctor just told me differently. These are the facts. This
Yes.
is what he told me. I don't feel like getting off the couch. I'm hurting.
Sure. Sure.
So I don't want to make light, but how, if you are hurting, can you be a little more present and mindful and maybe make some of those different choices? I think that's where it comes in. The choice to sit with the blanket over your head
Sure.
and cry
Sure.
all day,
Sure.
or the choice to pick up the phone and call a good friend to talk me through this really dark moment.
Yeah.
So that's a choice in itself,
It
to be
is.
a
It is
little
a
bit
choice.
more present about what's going on right now in my life. Um, and I know you and I talk about that sometimes, and you talk about having, friends with or family, and I have friends and families with some kind of health ailment or illness or diagnosis. And it's not easy for us to sit here and tell them, be present, be mindful, be in the moment. Don't think about tomorrow, think about today. I always think of Gone with the Wind and Scarlett O'Hara. That's got to
Yes.
be my favorite
Yes.
thing
Quote.
of all time. And I don't even say it correctly when I think about it, but I picture her on the front lawn, devastated
Yes.
about her whole
Yes.
life. Her life
Yes.
is over now, over, 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 over. And suddenly she stands up and she says, I think I'll think about this tomorrow.
That's right. That's right.
Mind blowing.
It is. It
I've thought
is.
of that through my whole life with different things, because that's the power of being present and making those little choices that I think we're kind of talking about.
Listen, I personally lived through it. Okay. I lived through 15 months of pancreatic cancer from my husband. And I know what living through pain and fear and all those things were. I know it. I know it. But I also know that we made the most of those 15 months. Whether it was some of the trips that we took during that time, whether it's the fact that we still went to a wedding, even though he was going through chemo, which is a big thing, whether it was doing some family things that, we had put off for a while. I I lived through it. I know the agony of sitting there sometimes and saying, what's going to happen tomorrow? I know that. And I felt it. But I also know that that time was precious and that we worked very hard to make every day count. And that's what we're talking about, making today count. Whether it was going for a walk together, whether it was, going to a special place, a special time, whether it was making sure we saw friends that we hadn't seen in a long time. It is a conscious thing that
Effort.
you make a decision to do it,
Yeah.
and as you said, the feeling is I'm just gonna retreat into my world, into my own world, and just forget the rest of the world. that is a conscious effort.
Now, let
And
me
it,
ask you about this, Lisa, and maybe you'll have a good answer for this, because as you're saying this, I'm thinking about my situation, right? Of course, we all do. And my situation with my husband, and how by emergency, he went into the ambulance and we went into the hospital. And I was there for 55 days. And
yeah.
most of those days he was intubated.
Mm,
Okay. There were only 2, I think, that he wasn't, which really wonderful things happened, but we're not here to talk about that. But my question is, I didn't know how to be mindful. I didn't know how to live in the moment. I had to live in the moment, of course, because I was thrown that. I didn't have time to pack a bag,
mm,
but I stayed there with him for all that time, for the 55 days.
mm,
So when I'm looking back now, thinking about, well, and I'm a mindful person,
mhm.
and I like to be in the present moment, although I'm learning more and more each day, of course. How was I being mindful during that time when I thought there was nothing to be present about, nothing to be mindful about? But I was thinking as you were speaking, I really was being in the present moment. I kept a journal on my lap
Okay.
the entire time. And I lived by this book because I wanted to write every single detail in this book, things that were happening. Many things happen wrong, you know,
Yeah.
things happen right as well. But I felt like that was my sense of control, being in that present moment to detail what I was going through on this journey.
Mhm.
Um, would you think that's being present in my
Sure.
moments?
Sure. And sure. But, that's a very difficult situation because you don't have any feedback, you don't have any interchange or anything. So for me, I would have brought in all kinds of photo albums. I was talk to him about all the different things we had done. Me, that's that's my
Yeah,
style.
but see, I didn't
You know.
I didn't do that. And as an end of life doula, these are the things that I do. But I didn't do that in my situation because I never, ever thought he would pass away from the flu, the regular flu.
But even if he
I did,
wasn't going to die,
yeah,
yeah, but even if he wasn't going to die, for me, it would have
yeah.
been it would have been part of all the wonderful memories and everything, bringing it, together. That's my
And
style.
I just froze and I hung on to hope every day that tomorrow you'll be better and we won't be going through this.
Yeah, I don't think it
I
was.
wish I
I
knew
don't.
you then, Lisa. You could have
Yeah,
helped
me
me
too.
through that.
Yeah, I don't think it was about hope or no hope. I think it's about celebrating. You know me with celebrating. And I still think that it's celebrating all those incredible times, whether he was going to be okay or not okay. I think the moment was, here's what we have. All these incredible memories and all this
Mm.
beautiful, we have a family and all that. And I think that that's what I would
And
do.
that's a good point in this discussion too, because we tend to just deep dive and think into the ball
Yes.
of hurt and pain
Yes.
and
Yes.
all of that, instead of thinking of anything else, let alone the good in our lives and our family and our friends and letting people in. We're just like this.
Yeah. I was thinking about my mom who was in the hospital for 7.5 months. No matter what I did, I could not get her out of that hospital. It was one thing after the other thing. And I remember my kids and I coming in and we decorated the room so it'd be a more pleasant room for her to be in. I also, she loved her hair getting done. And I got somebody to come in and do her hair periodically because I know that was something that she, had a lot of pride
Right.
in, how she looked. I also got somebody to do image stuff, imagery, so that it would help her kind of be in more of a state, more of a positive state. We
I think
celebrated.
these things though, Lisa, I think these things helped you be in the present moment.
Well,
Okay, so is there any words of wisdom that we can share for the person going through this? The person that has the diagnosis or has the illness. You know, it was easier for you to be present and in the mindful moment. You're the healthy one.
Sure, sure,
So, and as a doula, that's my job.
sure,
So I'm the healthy one, and it's easy for me to implement
sure,
these
sure,
beautiful things that you're talking about.
sure.
But what about that person who's has that illness and has that diagnosis? How do they possibly get out of their moment?
So you ready for this expression? You're not dead yet. Okay. You haven't, you feel like you're dying. Okay. And you've been told that you're dying, but you're not dead yet. And I know that sounds really harsh, but the fact that you're still alive means that you have the opportunity
That's the
to
word I was
still
thinking
live,
of.
to still live. Okay. I think that's such an important concept. Okay. You're
You know,
not,
that's one of the things that I tell my clients when I work with them with a terminal diagnosis. They have a rare golden nugget
that's
here.
right.
It's
That's
a
right.
rare golden nugget of time, of opportunity to come full circle. Now, I've worked with um, a client who didn't end up passing, right, with their diagnosis, which is a beautiful thing.
Sure.
However, they were present enough and mindful enough to want to work on all the things that we worked on along the way, just as if, just in case, you know, and that's a beautiful thing. When I
It
think
is.
that's what you mean by, you know, being in the present moment, um, while you're in the illness,
Right.
to do certain
Right.
things that you
Right.
might not have done when you weren't in the illness,
Correct.
just in
Correct.
case,
Just in case. That's right.
just in
And
case.
it's so easy to get locked into all the chemo and all the, the things that are happening. But the ability to pull yourself out of that and say, I have the opportunity now to do, to plan, to do something that I had put off. There's examples of people who decide to write a book because they never did before, or to see people who they had been putting off. And it is more than a bucket list because it is telling you this is today, and I'm going to do whatever I want today because this is important to me right now, right now.
That's right. And some of
And we,
this can bring calm into your life and take the anxiety away. I was flipping channels the other day. I was getting ready to go somewhere, and I have that smart TV in my room, and I had the YouTube channel on it. So sometimes I pop on there, and there was a comedian, and the title was, it's something about um, I can do it. Why? Because I'm over 50. All right. So that was her thing about being in the next chapter of her life, that she can do these things. And I kind of relate that to this a little bit. You know, you can do things. You can do things now because you have why? Why not? Why
that's
not?
right.
You
Why
can do
not?
anything you want to do now. Why
Yes.
not? You know, and we're not talking about, I mean, some people are just in a lot of pain, Lisa, a lot of pain
They,
all the time.
I saw it. I saw it. I mean, my husband was on really major medications besides the celiac nerve block he had. Okay. He was on MS Contin and oxycodone and all that stuff. He was. That's the only way he could survive. But during that time period, we still knew that there was precious time and that we would use that time in the best way we could. And obviously taking into account he's not going to run a marathon, okay? But there were other things that he could do and that we could focus on. And as human beings, we have a gift. We have a gift of being able to think about things and to know things and to be able to do things.
Now,
Other
hold on, Lisa. Hold on, hold on. You're the eternal optimist.
I am.
Okay, so let's talk to the couple that is at home today and is dealing with somebody who is
Yep.
in pain and doesn't want to do anything.
Yep.
And maybe that person, that other part of the couple, isn't the eternal optimist like you. They're afraid. You know, they're afraid. I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to do the wrong thing because it'll upset them. It'll upset the apple cart. And let's just be quiet and continue to have hope. So not being the eternal optimist like you are, that could encourage the situation in doing other things, what would you say to that person?
Here's the thing. I lived with that other person because my husband was not the eternal optimist or anything. And so you have a choice here. You have a choice. Do you want death to just take over your life? I mean, that's really it. Even though
Yeah.
obviously there's pain, even though, and I'm not minimizing because I know I saw with my mother, I saw with my husband, I lived through that months and months and months, and people live through years. Okay. But to try and still make something of your life, whatever you have left, whatever you're going through, that to me is an opportunity. This is an opportunity. My father didn't have that opportunity because he died suddenly, and my biological mother didn't have that opportunity. To me, for me as a choice, if I'm if I have the opportunity to still live and maybe be able to do some things that perhaps I hadn't had the opportunity to do, or look, I don't want to be in pain. I don't want to have to go through. Nobody does. And obviously, there's so many diseases that are horrible. They're horrible. And so the choices are, what do you do about that? Do you continue to just agonize and whatever, or do you make the most and do what you can? Listen, with limited resources, you still can do things. You have a great example of that woman who really wanted to see that concert. And look what you did for her. Look at that incredible thing that you did for her with that 3D thing. You know, you gave her a concert. I think being creative and looking at your life and saying it's not over yet. I think that's it. We're not dead yet. Okay. We may be dying or we might be told that we don't have long to live, but that's your dash. That dash is the time period that you have between when you were born and when you die. And some of us know sooner than others. And maybe part of it is the gift of knowing because now you can actually decide to do things. And you may not. Look at how many people in stage 4 cancer and still live. So nobody really knows. But what we do know is what we decide to do with that time. That's what we do know. Whatever
You
time
know,
we have.
and I have to throw in here because it's important to me and it's helped me in many situations to try and find some spirituality in your life. And it doesn't have to be, I'm not talking about any particular religion, but just plain spirituality. And there's books all over, there's YouTube videos, but something that resonates with you, something that makes you feel, okay, I've learned this concept. I've always felt this concept through my whole life that, we're brought into the world to learn particular lessons, but we're going back home. We're going
Mhm.
back home. And for me, that feels good. That feels good because I don't feel like there's a finite ending, there's just an ending to things. So that's my own belief. That's my own spiritual belief, whatever yours may be. Just find it. We all have a spiritual gift in some way, shape, or form. Find that and do what makes you feel good. And maybe it'll mean talking to people, talking outside of the box a little bit, whether it be a pastor or maybe you've been interested in Buddhism during your life and you can talk to somebody, that attends that. But think outside of the box in the things that you're doing now. Again, it's opportunity.
It is.
And it's that golden nugget that, hey, you can do these things now. Why not?
Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
not? Who's going to tell
That's
you otherwise?
that's right.
Do what you want to do. Do what you think is right. And just try to bring in a little bit of joy and happiness in your days. And maybe you can't get up and you can't go outside the house. Okay. So maybe invite a couple people over and get takeout and just spend time, and watch a chick flick or a male flick or whatever, but just laugh, find some opportunities to laugh and to help yourself feel good. Because I think that if we're all given 12 months to live, say we're all given the diagnosis,
Sure.
right? And we all
Sure.
have 12 months to live right now. Well, what's going to be your choice? Are you going to do everything in your power to live those last 12 months to the best of your ability? And maybe with a smile on your face, even beyond the pain. We're not lightening the pain.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Are you going to do that? Or are you going to cry and sulk because you won't be here in a year?
Right.
Well, then
Right.
you've wasted time.
Correct. Correct.
And
Correct.
I think that's what you're trying to say here today, Lisa, right?
It is. And I'm also talking about unfinished business. A lot of people put off things and they're not thinking about today, because they say, hey, like you said, hey, I have unlimited amount. It doesn't really matter. But given that, I love that example because that is a wake up call to each of us about the preciousness of life, whether we know what's ahead or we don't know what's ahead. It's saying that we need to do everything that is important to us, no matter what our circumstances are. I love that. For me, growing up, knowing that my mother had died and I was only 2, unfortunately, I grew up very serious and I always had to know that I could be dead in an instant. I'm sorry. That that's how I grew up. I just knew the preciousness of life and that anything can happen at any time. And everybody else was just sort of living casually their lives and all, and I was never living casually. I said to myself, even maybe I'm going to live past 26 because that's how old she was, maybe. And then I would do another, maybe I'll live another 5 years. And so for me it was always.
I almost see that as a plus, a
That's
bonus,
right, that's right.
an opportunity for you, a
Yes,
blessing to
it
live
was.
life like that, because
That's right,
that's where
that's
you
right.
got all the positive, celebrating life parts of you.
Yes, yes, yes,
But
yes,
I also know that um due to certain circumstances, many in my life, many I've had so much trauma in my life. I can't even list it out for you. So I know what it's like to feel dark. I know what dark times are. And sometimes you feel like I'm just never going to get out of this
yes,
and give up,
yeah,
and you give up, and then at that last minute, something always forces you to live through. I can get over this. And I always remembered Scarlett O'Hara. I'll feel better about this tomorrow. I'll
yes,
give
yes,
myself the day.
yes.
So I've managed that way, but I do know that it's hard. It's
Sure it
hard,
is.
whether it's another trauma, whether it's an illness, whether it's your health, whether it's the diagnosis. We're
Yes,
human beings and we
we
were
are.
put on this earth to have challenges no matter what they may be. And we all have different challenges.
Sure,
And if
sure.
this is yours right now, if it has to do with your health, if it has to do with a diagnosis, then you have to live with this challenge,
That's right.
but you have a
That's right.
choice and you
You
have
do.
the opportunity to
That's right.
live with the challenge in a positive way or a negative way,
That's right. That's right. And
right?
and by the way, we have talked about support groups. I'm going to mention it again, so that you're not alone in your diagnosis and you are with other people who had the same diagnosis or at least can help you through what you might be going through. Is this normal and all? There is nothing wrong with going to a support group and being able to hear from others as well. Now, sometimes it's helpful to people and sometimes it is not, but I know that for me, it was very helpful to hear from other people. I was on a listserv of I don't know how many thousands of people. That was a worldwide listserv. And just to hear about pancreatic cancer and then to go to a caregiver group and to figure out, how we feel. And it's all right to be angry sometimes. It's all right to be sad. It's all right to scream and yell. So for me, the present was how do I cope? And how do I help my husband in the best way that I can? The same way, for my mother. So
We
finding
grow
those
up with
things.
the thought. We grow up with the thought, Lisa, misery loves company. I don't want to be
Yes.
around people who are going through that or whatever. But it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a particular illness, whether it's you've had a baby and you're having postpartum depression, whether you have a child who's really rambunctious and you can't control this child. That getting support and going to support groups and talking to another mother that
Yes.
maybe has the same kind of child as you, that crazy child, will helps you feel supported in such a way that you know that you're not alone. So it is
That's
a
right.
support groups are really, really good for that.
They
Absolutely.
are. They are. They are.
Very good. And getting back to some support groups, well, we won't go, I don't know if you wanted to talk about your bereavement group, because that's a little bit different than
It is
what we're
different.
discussing
That is
today.
different. It's
So we
different.
will we'll leave that out today. But doula services, right? Go to susancapurso.com, and these are some of the things I do when somebody has a diagnosis to try and help you to get from point A to point B in a more positive way, doing the things that you want to do to
Yes.
help you feel more fulfilled at this time in your life. And I say this on many videos, when my husband passed, I felt so alone in the world, and the feeling of being touched, whether a friend put their hand on my shoulder or whatever, I felt like I craved that, like I was a child and vulnerable to the hug.
Yeah.
So I have a salon around the corner where I get a manicure, pedicure, and they have that 10-minute or 15-minute massage that the girl comes around and gives to you. Well, I paid her extra for that extra 10 minutes and I went a lot, as weird as
Yes.
it sounds, but it just made me feel so good.
Nice.
So whatever that may be for you, no matter where you are or what you're suffering through, find the little things like that that are going to bring more fulfillment into your life.
Yes.
I don't know if it'll be joy, but maybe it could be a little bit of happy along the way. But you can make the purposeful decision to do that and to bring these
Yes.
things in,
Yes. Yes.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I
Again,
hope
it's
some of
making
these
today
things have
count.
helped a little today,
Me
Lisa.
too. Me too. Me too. We have not minimized anything of what people are going through because
Please
it's a
don't
very
think that.
difficult time, very difficult time for people. And I
Yeah,
feel for them. I feel for what they're going through. But I also know how precious this time is, no matter what time.
we both know that. And that's why we're talking about this subject. So you may slam your computer closed right now and not
That's
want
right.
to ever listen to us again,
That's right.
because we're thinking about celebrating and enjoying life, but that's not the case. We're trying to have here on this channel open and honest discussions
That's
about
right.
things that a lot of people don't want to maybe talk about,
That's right.
and especially you brought up the death word a couple times today, Lisa, and that's hard to say and it's
Yep.
hard to hear, but sometimes it's reality. And if we
Yep.
know that, well, what can we do to feel a little bit better about that and to make some changes in our life? And that's
Yeah.
all we're trying to talk about today.
And by the way, taking
Yeah.
control is very powerful. When you feel like you're out of control of everything, taking control and making decisions is very, very helpful. A very
Of course.
positive thing.
Of
Yeah.
course, because depending on how ill you are, suddenly you're an independent person who now has many people surrounding them, making
Right.
decisions for them.
Yeah.
And losing that independence can be a real struggle, and we know that and acknowledge that. So bringing in as much of these little things that we're talking about, bringing in as much as you can into your world,
Yes.
can make all the difference in the world. And like I said at the very beginning, open pathways for you and maybe help you think outside that box a little bit,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
If
That's right.
anybody has any questions or just wants to
Yeah.
chat about anything we've talked about, Lisa and
Yep.
I are welcome for that. That's why we clearly put our phone numbers up there for you to
Yes.
reach out at any time. We'd love to hear from
Yes.
you.
Yes.
But
And also the comments. We
yeah,
appreciate comments for everything that, we discuss because we discuss things that people do not. So it's really nice to
and
hear
share the
people's reaction.
channel. Share the
Yes,
channel with
please.
someone who in your life who may be going through some of these things, or somebody who wants to learn
And
about
I
going
do.
through.
And I do. When I find that there's a particular episode, I share it with people who are going through things.
Yeah,
It's and it
yeah.
resonates.
Right, right, right. Right.
Yes.
So you can do that too. You can be mindful for somebody else, a family member or a friend. And it may be something they're going through. There are a lot of good topics on here that Lisa and I try and come up with and think of. And if you can think of any extra
Yes.
topics that we
Yep.
haven't discussed yet, please throw them out there, because we're ready, willing, and able and open to new types of discussion.
We are. We are.
Thank you for
Yes.
joining us today. And
Thank you.
Lisa, I will see you. You're going to travel down to Florida this week. So, but we will continue on next week once you get
We will.
settled with your Wi-Fi and everything goes okay.
We will.
And
We will.
we're about to do a series of discussions that I think many people will find valuable on different types of diagnosis. And
Yes.
I think the first one we'll be talking about is pancreatic cancer, because that's well known to you, Lisa. And
It
we'll
is.
go through cancer and different diagnoses to help you, maybe. Not be the medical expert, of course,
No, we're
because
not.
you're
This is
not.
not a medical channel. This
That's
is not.
right. But
Yes.
to help you or to help family or friends to understand better and to help
Yes.
the person in the family that they love. So keep an eye out for that. We look forward to that. And we look forward to talking to you soon. Get ready for the holidays. They're coming.
Yes. Yes.
Quicker than we'd like, but they're
They
coming.
are.
We can't
They are.
stop them. All
Great.
right. So Lisa, have a safe
Okay.
trip and we'll see you
Thank
next
you.
week.
Sounds great. Take care of yourself, everybody.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.